Hey, welcome to Tuesday lunchtime. We got here. How you doing? The sun is shining here. My name's Cherie and I am a psychotherapist, a psychologist and a mum, a partner. I own loads of pets. I love sailing and I'm here today because this is Direct Joy, and every Tuesday I get to show up and spend 20 odd minutes, because I'd like to talk, sharing with you my view of kind of mental health and well-being and emotional well-being, and what I know is helpful, some of the questions that are coming up in the circles that I live and work in, and what I think is helpful kind of as a collective group, as a community, to be able to share. And I think it's really important at the moment. It's always important to talk about mental health, coming off the back of Mental Health Awareness Week. And, what is it about mental health that is so difficult to talk about? What is it that is really kind of the nubbins that is really hard to share, and why is it difficult to show up and talk about our mental health? What's that shame? And that kind of came up for me last week when we were discussing this, and it why is it that there's so much stigma and shame? And if you haven't listened, listen back, grab the replay for last week, because it really was so inviting for us to think about the choices that we make in thinking about mental health. And that's really why I'm doing this. This is really why I'm showing up. I don't say that I have all the answers. I just know the experience that I've got and where I'm at. I think it's really important that we can start cracking open some of these things that are really difficult to talk about. And I was looking back on kind of where we've been in the last 2 months with Direct Joy. What are the questions actually that have been avoided when what are the questions that we avoid when it comes to mental health? And anxiety and fear, they are the real nubbins of it, aren't they? If it gets too much, that's where a lot of issues arise from in difficult mental health. That's really the nubbins of it. And so anxiety and fear, what is that about? And what is it we've got with that? And so that's where I wanted to start today. So really, this is my first question from me to myself to discuss, and for you guys to listen and share and comment. And hello, welcome. Hello, Tuesday. So I'm going to talk about anxiety and fear being a really similar thing today, because anxiety and fear are a really similar thing. And that sense of what is going on when we're anxious, when we're scared. Something might be happening, something may happen in the future, some cyclical pattern may play out. What's that place that we go to? And I like to talk about it. You may have heard me talk about this previously in other videos and in blogs that I've written and in your work with me. You may have heard about this before, but I talk about the lion. And when the lion approaches you, if a lion were to approach you, what would you do? There's lots of things that you may or may not do, first thing that comes to mind, but actually you'd be understandably scared, okay? Because it's a lion, king of the jungle, has walked in. We have a primitive urge. We have a physical response to that lion. If we don't respond, the lion may walk away, may not. Whatever that fear may be in that sense, if we do nothing and that lion is still coming towards us, our physical response is going to get louder. It might be fight, it might be flee, it might be freeze, it may be something else. But a primitive urge is going to happen. And if we suppress that, the more we suppress that, the louder our urge gets, because we're human beings and that's what we do. And if we go against, if we come out of sync of what our natural response is to that fear, to that lion, to that attack, potential attack, that is the point there where it's going to get louder and louder and louder and louder and louder. And that's exactly what happens with our emotions. So this is real or otherwise. At this point, the lion's just walked into the room, right? There's just an awareness of something being, the lion may be tame, we don't know. So at this point, it doesn't matter whether the fear is real or otherwise. And we tend to get caught up in that, especially in our conversations. Oh, it's not real, it's not going to happen. These are the reasons it's not going to happen, etc., etc., etc. But actually, there's something in this that is still threatening. And we know it's still threatening. The urges within us, the physical response, the emotional response, the mental response, everything is pointing us towards the fact that this is scary. And out of sync, really. And we become then absolutely preoccupied, just like we would if a lion walked in the room now. We would be preoccupied, right? I wouldn't then be thinking, oh, what do I need to catch up with in Sainsbury's? And it's running a bit late. And all that conversation I had this morning was lovely. None of that. A lion's in the room, right? And that's what happens with fear and anxiety over whatever it might be, real or otherwise. And I think it's really important that we start from that point, because in a lot of conversations with people, we do tend to do that thing where it's like, oh, it's not real. And it's like, well, yeah, but it is. From my perspective, it is. This is a possibility. And even if I know it's not a possibility, I still have something that is knotted, something that is unreal, something that is untangible, unthinkable, it's a problem. And it's causing an emotional response. It's causing that anxiety, that fear, that frustration, that anger. And that's where we're in. So just to set the scene there, it's just like if the lion walked into the room. And we can get really overwhelmed by this stuff, yeah, even if it's not real, okay, real. And it's shocking, okay, whatever it may be, you may think of something in your life right now. It feels as though it's a shock, okay? It feels as though it's an attack. It feels as though it's something you need to attack against, or it feels as though it's something you need to defend against. And whenever we are in that space, our natural urges come up, our primitive, primal being of being human, we are reminded of that. That pure, creative sense of who we are, our soul essence roars. We become the lion. And that can happen in really interesting ways. It can show up in our lives in very interesting ways, and paying attention to that is helpful. Our bodies are attuned to, just like as if we were in caveman times, that sense of, well, what's the danger, and can I sleep, and are my children protected, and is it okay to sleep at night? Maybe it's not. Maybe there is some threats. Maybe there is a huge amount of overwhelm. And it's not just about the washing pile. It's about more than that, isn't it? You may see it's that, but then you sort it out. You sort out your pile in your kitchen drawer that is just the tidbit drawer, and you've sorted that out, but you're still feeling a bit anxious. You do your washing, you make sure you've got enough food in the cupboard, all your work list is done and sorted, and everything is neat and tidy and pristine. Yet there's still something bugging. There's still something not quite right. There's still a fear. What is going on then? And to me, it's a bit like when you see a daffodil in bloom or starting to bloom in December. It's like, that's not right. What's going on there? There's a daff. That doesn't make sense. It's not March. It's not Mother's Day. But there's a daffodil. It's out of sync. It's a line in my living room. There's a daffodil in my garden. What's going on? Our body is very, very, very similar. Our emotional life, our mental life, our soul essence is very, very similar to that daffodil in December. If something is out of sync, it's out of sync. And we can sort out our external world until the cows come home, until the lions come home. But actually, until we're doing the internal work, until we're thinking about our mental health, until we're thinking about, okay, 1 minute, why is there a stigma? Why is there a shame? Why is there an anxiety? Why am I absolutely petrified of X, Y, Z? Until we do that work, until we really go within, and no one else can do it for us. No one else can go to that place. No one else can translate in quite that way. No one else, a lot of people do speak Cherie language, but no one quite speaks to me in that way. I listen to this absolutely heart-opening, mind-blowing, highly recommended podcast over the weekend. And I was feeling really, really, really sorry for myself with an absolutely stinking cold. I don't get colds. And so it really stopped me. I was stopped in my tracks, physically, mentally, everything. But I listened to, it was actually Friday I started to listen to it, this podcast with Dr. Edith Eger, sorry. And I've read her books before, but I've never actually heard her speak. And she did a kind of testimony, and it really was mind blowing. And one of the things that I'll post it up in the comments of the replays, but one of the things that really stuck with me was she's a Holocaust survivor. So I'll just give you a brief summary here now. And when she was a child, her mother and father and elder siblings had been taken off, and she knew that they'd been taken and they were in the concentration camp. They'd been killed. And it was her and her littlest sister, and they were there. And every time they had a shower, they didn't know whether that would be a gas shower and they would die, or it was a shower. And that was just the way of life. That was life for the time that they were in there. And the last thing her mother said to her, one of the last things her mother said to her was, no one can take away the power of what you put into your thoughts and your mental being. No one can take that away. You will always be truly liberated by what you put in. And that has really stuck with me. That sense of only I choose what stays. Only I choose what is put in. I choose. I'm liberated. So whatever fears are going on, whatever anxiety is going on, I have that ability with mental capacity to choose that. It's not what I've got, it's what I do with it. And to me, that was so profound. You know, this woman is in a Holocaust camp as a kid, and she's taking that on board. And I'm like, okay, I think I can do that. I can do that, right? Can you do that? How do we do that? What is that about? What is the other side of fear? If we say, okay, yeah, I am scared, and it might not be real, it might be real, but this is the thing I'm scared of. Putting it out there. This is what I'm scared of. Then what do we do with it? How do we go with it? How do we acknowledge the shame? How do we acknowledge the fact that, yes, I do want to control it. I would love to be able to control so many areas of my life. Hands up. It would be absolutely awesome to be able to have control. But this reminds us that we're not in control, because we can set this stuff up to be the way we want it to be, or we think we want it to be, and then actually it doesn't work out like that, and we still don't feel great, and we still feel the fear, and we still live 70% of the time in the future, and we still don't feel liberated, and the daffodils are still coming up in December, and the lion's still walking into the room, and I'm not sleeping, and this is happening, and that's happening, and this pain hurts, and I'm exhausted just thinking about it, and that's not even specific to an anxiety of something that's happening. So the more I think we acknowledge that we can have an impact on what we put in and what we choose to allow in, the more that we can feel liberated. It's not control, because the controlling side is the fearful side. It's the not what you got, it's what you do with it. Edith, she likes to be known rather than Dr. Ego, which I think is awesome. That's her name, and she will use it. She said it as an off cut, but I wrote it down. And at one point on Friday, I was driving. I had to stop the car to write this down because I was listening to the podcast driving. The emperor has no clothes on. not even shorts. Now, if you know the story of the emperor and his no clothes, I am sure that will make you chuckle as much as it did me. Which it's a fantastic story, and I love how biblical passages are just hilarious, and that got completely bypassed in the whole of my childhood. But I love to find the humour, and I love to find the fact that there's humour and there is such strong messages in the stories in the Bible, the stories that we share, the stories of community, and the stories of who we are. And actually, you know, the emperor has no clothes on, not even shorts. And that is true for all of us, right? We are all the emperor of our worlds. Of course we are. We need to be. But we are also coming into this world butt naked. And that's the way we leave it too. And, you know, how cool is that? What about that liberation? What about taking up the fact of choice? What about taking up the fact of doing the internal work, and it not just being about what's outside and what's about other people and what we're told and what should and what's needed? I am massively an advocate of that. I'm massively an advocate of the fact of, you know, when you feel the overwhelm, when you feel the anxiety, when the lion is in the room, even if it's not attacking yet, what can you do? What can you do? What can you take? What position can you take up? Because we don't know whether that's a friendly lion. We don't know the opportunities that lion could offer us. We don't know. And going to a place of fear, going to a place of wanting to control, going to a place of anxiety, I'm not sure how liberating that is. I wonder if there are other choices that we can choose to put in, and there are other choices that we can make to say no to. And, you know, linking into the kind of boundary issues that we've talked about previously. What's that like to think about that? What's it like to do the internal work? I'd love to do the internal work with you. I'm honoured to work with people that do that. I'm also so pleased that you've shown up and watched today. If that's brought up more questions for you, excuse my doggies. I think the postman's probably here. And yeah, if that's brought up stuff for you, I'd love to hear from you. If that cracks open a conversation, I would love to hear from you. Yeah, I wish you well as we go into this week. Things are starting to open up more, and that can be really scary, and it's really, really real and scary. So whatever's going on for you, you know, keep in contact with others, keep the messages that are going in, the ones that you want going in, and yeah, just go with joy, go with grace, go with ease, and I wish you lots of love for this week, and I look forward to seeing you next week, if not before. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.